We live.
Yeah.
So-
We live.
I have something to tell y'all.
Ooh.
Remember how we talked about Alexander Dugin, that magician who works for Putin in Russia?
Yes, we did.
Oh yeah.
Somebody put a fucking car bomb in his shit and tried to kill him. And his wards made it so his daughter took the car bomb instead of him.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn. That is that's
So it kind of made me think about an interesting topic for today's episode. We could talk about court magicians of the world and the real not so known fact that a lot of places hire. I was talking to my mom about this because she asked me, do you think the Illuminati is real? And I'm like, yes and no, Mom. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, one, there's no unified group that just runs everything. That's unrealistic. The world is in conflict with itself. You can't tell me that all these opposing groups are going to have one leadership. That's just stupid. But that said, pretty much every group of people who run shit in the world know that magic exists, and they either employ it of their own practice, of hiring a practitioner, or deliberately suppressing people in the area around them so that they can't do it against them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I was thinking we could do as a starting topic so that we had something to chat about.
I don't know of any other secret society working for
Well, we all know that Aleister Crowley got hired by the Crown during the time of World War I and II, right? Or not one, but World War II. So
yeah, it's that was a little bit before his time.
If
Yeah,
someone's getting hired to do top secret stuff, you're not going to find out about it to begin with, you know?
Right.
So yeah,
The only secret societies that I can even begin to chime in on is half of my family is part of the Masons, which some allege has connections to what would be considered the Illuminati. I can tell you it's just a bunch of racist old white men who just hate their wives
people.
and they just drink a lot, and then they also hate anyone that's not white and Catholic. So they're
Funny
just
thing
another
about the
race in
Masons-
this organization.
Hang on, let me get my bow on. Another
But they
funny thing
claim
about
they're
the
fine
Masons...
because they have a sister organization that all the women can join. Yay!
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they
Jay,
get a
just
beautiful
staring.
building in downtown Philadelphia. They kind of built this city.
We built this
Sorry.
Copyright infringement.
Copyright infringement.
No, we actually looked up the
Other-
rules about cover songs. So I would say that counts as a
Yeah.
cover.
Exactly.
Another thing about the Masons, though, is they came about because they were essentially a union of Masonic workers who built the castles for kings back in the day in Europe. And they had collected interests, and they unionized it, or made a guild, more or less. And naturally, they had a lot of money, they had a lot of power, they had a lot of influence. You already had to study a fair amount to do masonry as is. It wasn't just a simple task. You had to learn about angles and math and a lot of that stuff. And you also have to understand how back in the day in Europe, knowledge of things like math is some pretty
It's
upper
witchcraft.
class shit. Yeah. So
Mathematics was considered witchcraft.
not
a certain
only
point.
so, and you have to understand how the circles of knowledge worked. You'd overlap with a lot of witchcraft people practicing in the time because you're studying math, right? That's also kind of how people who were considered early alchemists were actually practicing a craft unto themselves, right? So they naturally did pick up some shit from other practitioners, which is why they have ritual and formula, and how they draw stuff off of their cornerstones, and how they use that as a representation of the fundamental building blocks of the universe, and how everything draws off of that perfection and replicating itself. And that's why there's a ceremony when they're building something around when they place a cornerstone. Yeah, I've read my shit. And Drew's just nodding okay, she's not talking shit, she's actually right on this.
Yeah,
'cause when
Philly
I
in
was younger, I was
particular
actually
has
considering...
Yeah, Philly in particular, especially downtown Philly, its design is very Masonic influence. Like they had a huge influence in building the city.
The Masons own all of Center City, Philadelphia.
Yeah, basically.
It's because they have a lot of money.
Like a
money.
lot of our structures, like if you go to Center City, Philly, you see what is now City Hall. That building is completely made by the Masons, and then right across the street is the Masonic Temple, and then there's another Gothic church, but that church was, interestingly, although it's Catholic, was also Mason by the Freemasons.
St. Peter's Basilica was built by the Masons.
Is that what that is?
Yes. St. Peter's Basilica, yeah.
And so, like, there's that too. And all of that area, it's going out for, I don't know, like, how many clicks out from Center City, but it goes out in, like, a square. And the city actually pays the Masons rent for using City Hall in Philadelphia. At least that's it was true. It was true when I was like in my teens. So
yeah, I don't know if the city actually owns City Hall at this point. I don't know if they actually own the building. You know what I was researching?
It sounds like some capitalism.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was researching the other day about City because I had to work in the office a couple weeks this summer, and so it's right near City Hall. And so like on my lunch break, I was like, all right, let me just, because they have the courtyard open now with the compass in the middle. And so I stood in the very center, but it's also like really hard to just stand in the center of City Hall in the middle of the day because there's a million people walking by you. And so I tried to do it in very I don't know, like a very casual kind of way. Like, hey, I'm not an occultist standing in the middle of downtown Philly. Go about your business. But I was just kind of just like getting the vibe, and I just really noticed there are so many statues and gargoyles on the outside of that building. There are so many, and I realized like not only do like you have William Penn up at the or it is Penn up at the top, right?
Yes.
I always mix up him and Ben Franklin. Don't fucking ask why. Anyway, old white guy at the top of the building, and there's a bunch of other statues, and one of them was actually, I think one of them is like a statue of a Native American, and it shows that, because it was actually like recorded that William Penn himself, he tried to do it right when he first founded this area, like when he first came here, I guess, and started building this city. Was like he tried to form a relationship with the tribes that were here. His sons did not carry that on. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I was looking at like all the statues on City Hall. There's like 30 something, or like there's a million of them, and they all have really specific deep symbolism that's really interesting. Like a whole book just on the statues.
There's a lot of like sacred geometry and that goes into like Mason work. Similar, I always said like a lot of the trades work like from yesteryear, way back when, like even like blacksmithing, magic, stone masonry, magic, like all of them had like a distinct form of magics that they worked with. But of course, like Masons weren't the only people using like designing buildings with magic in mind, I know in like I forget the proper pronunciation, so I'm just going to Anglo-Saxonize it, but feng shui, they also in certain parts of Asia build houses and things like that using certain principles, but feng shui can also be, once again, about like geometry, a number sacred to the traditions present there. So like that's
now they
really
just build shit anyway without any sort of rhyme or reason. I was seeing a lot of Twitter threads about like modern design, right? Like how it's very like there's no personality really in it. It's very plain, flat, sharp, distinct lines, like this sort of like modern aesthetic. Some of them just look like souped up shipping containers, some of these like housing things, but I was thinking the reason maybe why our architecture is so simple, one, probably because capitalism, right? And we just want to pump things out as fast as possible, right? So that's one of the reasons. But I was also thinking maybe another reason could be because like our lives are so busy. You know what I mean? Like we have so much stimuli coming at us all the times from our phones, from TVs, from like everything all the time, all around us, that maybe we just like subconsciously maybe we need our environments to not be as busy because we're so busy from our devices and all these other things.
It depends. I do know a big leading factor is the fact that prettier houses cost more money, and people are so financially oppressed that like we can't afford to beautify our homes, and a lot of us can't even afford to have them like have proper insulation to begin with, right? Like my
Mhm.
house here uses double single pane windows, which is super fucking illegal, right? Because it creates an air pocket inside that cools to the outside air temperature, and it doesn't do anything to cut thermal insulation. And we're going to have to fight with our landlords just to get them to replace it, right? So if we can't even get our basic like insulation needs taken care of and our hot water heaters replaced, we certainly don't have money to beautify any of that shit, right? And when you do see some modern concept homes, they can be really pretty and extravagant too, right? But it's just, I think that so much of the class divide has happened that like that type of like fanciful housing is borderline unaccessible to somebody who's middle class or lower unless they explicitly build their own houses like my father does, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
And
like
that is something
architects are expensive too.
they are.
Mhm.
And like getting a
Yeah.
house built was something that like we were looking into for a minute because we were like, well, is it really more cost efficient just to buy a plot of land and then get someone to build your house? You know, like is it the same? For a while there, the cost was it was actually more efficient, you know, to kind of just pay a little bit more and get a house that's built exactly how you want it to be. Versus, you know, spending almost the same amount of money and you're inheriting all the problems of a 100-year-old house. Because
Yes.
especially, you know, if you live in an old part of the country, like Philly's old, shit's been around a long time, so old as shit. But now everything's just fucked. So it's, you know, don't even think about the like the whole market's just fucked. So whether you build or buy, it's all shit.
Eventually we'll have a collapse or we'll have a revolution. As we're going right now is just unsustainable to the point where like not even the environment will let it sustain, you know? So there's hope in the fact that there's no way this system can exist as it is for the next 100 years.
It can't. Like it just
can't.
It really can't. And I've been watching The Sandman Netflix. I actually finished it all up. I don't know if you finished it.
I have I well, now I have 4 episodes. I had 3 episodes, but they just released actually the 2. I didn't watch the
2 bonus episodes.
We
Yeah.
watched that last night.
But I've watched the majority of it, so
Right, and honestly, nothing's really a spoiler. But like this ongoing concept in the show of if enough humans dream it, it will become reality. Like it becomes that reality in their reality, not in the dream world or whatever.
That's some DKMU shit right there.
Right, it's very, very. It's like as I'm watching it, I was like, well, obviously, like Neil Gaiman, he's an cultist. You know,
he's Neil Gaiman's an old school chaos magician.
Yeah,
like he's of course he's gonna have the exact same tenets that we do.
Yeah, and like basically like the whole time I'm watching Sandman, I was like, I feel like I'm at church. Like I feel like I'm getting a sermon. Like this is religion for me, right? Like thinking about manifesting your dreams.
And, you know, it's also interesting because like that show has spurred off so many magical conversations in the server I'm in right now, and I've like not read them because they do the spoiler blocks on it, and I will eventually watch the show if it's that good, right?
It is very good.
Like apparently like even people are discussing magical theory crafting based off of the shit they're seeing in it. So
right, and I just feel like Neil Gaiman, like as an occultist, like I feel like he just had someone on speed dial at Netflix, right? And in 2020 he probably called them and was like, listen, I don't like this, so we're gonna need to release Sandman in the next couple years. Can we get that going? Like, I just feel like that's what happened.
Netflix has shown a total willingness to release subversive material or controversial stuff. Like, look at Midnight Gospel, right?
What? I never watched that. A lot of people were raving about that.
Midnight Gospel is basically a guy who does a podcast like we do, where he talks about like concepts like life, death, God, magic, that kind of shit, psychedelics, you know. And they animated his podcast to a TV
Oh,
show
Midnight
and kind of
Gospel.
strung it together
Yes.
with a loose plot. Yeah.
I was mixing that with another horror-looking kind of show, Midnight Mass.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know.
you're talking about the really good vampire vampire where they're on an island.
No idea. I don't know, something like
Oh.
a small town. I don't know. But yes,
Yeah,
I
no,
did.
it's
I did see the
it's
first
a
episode of Midnight
it's like
Gospel.
really good vampire. If you're into like a vampire horror, it's actually really good. But I digress. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about, Sophia. I couldn't think about it, but it's really psychedelic. Like the show itself is
Very
very
colorful.
psychedelic. I know what you're talking about.
We tried to watch it. We watched
don't think
the
I was
first
high enough.
episode. Yeah, I was like, we need shrooms to watch this show. Like, I was like, there's not enough marijuana for me to.
Or maybe it
understand
was
the
like
show.
maybe we had to get
I was
to
like,
maybe we had to get to episode 2. Maybe that's where it was. Like we just got to episode 1.
We need
I
flying
think
weapons
any
just to watch
show
this.
any show that's
Nothing.
sufficiently
Nothing.
subversive will take a few episodes to get the drift of if you're not already aligned with the currents that it's talking about, right?
True,
so for
yeah.
like somebody who's been like for example, Fish Sticks knows the guy who made that show. She worked in a call center with him, right?
Oh, that's
So
cool.
like some of the conversations that happen in the show I've actually had with Fish on like a one-to-one basis, right?
That's neat.
So I'm already kind of primed for a lot of the subject material, and I've like had a lot of those experiences or talked about some of the things that goes on in the show because of like the spheres that I'm in, right? But to somebody who isn't, it will take you a little bit to kind of grok the whole thing. And like any show, you always need to see more than one episode because the first episode is typically designed in a way to hook you, whether it's by being so strange that you have to watch more to figure out what it's about, or by giving you like a cliffhanger so deep that you can't ignore it, or by having world building so interesting that you just want to see where it goes. And Scott, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, right? They try to hook you, and because of that, sometimes they make weird artistic or production decisions in the first episode that they wouldn't in other ones. And sometimes the first episode is straight up a pilot, which is shot with far less budget and money, and then it gets approval from the studio, and then they keep that first episode, and everything after that's different. That's why the first episode of Rick and Morty is so different from like the rest of the show, you know?
Yeah, it's actually funny. My friend Rick, he actually hated Rick and Morty. I watched the first episode, I fucking hated it. Did you watch the second episode? Yeah, and then I liked it. Usually
yeah, because the first episode was a pilot.
Yeah. Like, honestly, the first time I watched What We Do in the Shadows, the first episode, I was like, eh. And then I rewatched it later, and then I watched the second episode, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, the show's actually great. Yeah, this is an amazing show. I see you giggling over there, Scott.
And it's because the first episode's a pilot, almost always. Unless it's a show that they know they're going to greenlit a whole thing ahead of time, like Disney will do. They greenlit the entire season of Mandalorian, I'm pretty sure, before they even shot a fucking trailer for it, right? Stuff like that, they'll put the whole production budget into it from the get-go, but pilots get significantly less, let me just tell you.
I can imagine. Sometimes I feel so silly because, like, a lot of my belief in magic comes from fiction. It comes from things quote real. So, I get so like I love when like new like occulty like shows like this come out and they make you think, and because then it just like re-inspires me to like do the magic and do the work and investigate this. You know, like accessing the dreaming or whatever it may be, because really it's just like, I don't know, it's lucid dreaming. It's something that like we've been studying for a long time, and that's kind of what they touch on in Sandman. And I just like, I guess there's been a lot of synchronicity, and even like what you said in like last recording, Sophia, how you said like it seems like a lot of people have kind of like given into this, the future is bleak and dystopian, and that's just the way it is, and pip, get back to work, you know? And that's not, it doesn't have to be. Like, it doesn't have to be, but that's what we're all collectively, like, being forced to think that that's the only way, and it's really not the only option that we have. Like, we could be better. And in order for us to Yeah, like it really is. It's like they just like I always say all the time. I'm like they just want to keep us like the people that are in power now, whoever these are, this capitalist machine. They just want to keep us dumb and sick and and just needing them. Like just needing just a little bit more. I just need a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to get ahead.
The more docile you are, the less you'll fight.
Right, and I don't like that.
One of my favorite sayings is, if it was hopeless, they wouldn't need propaganda.
I like that.
That's a good point, because they really just reinforce it. Like, it's just reinforced all the time. Like this quiet quitting thing that everyone's talking about. Like, what?
Don't
what's quiet quitting?
Get me started.
Oh,
so
yeah, take the reins on the quiet quitting.
Please. Quiet quitting is this term that Wall Street Journal, that Bloomberg, that New York Times has grasped onto, and it's doing your job and that's it. Not doing extra work, like unpaid work, not going above and beyond for your corporation is quiet quitting. Just doing your job is quitting. And that's the narrative they're pushing now, because people aren't standing for this bullshit anymore.
They are doing the exact requirements of their job, and they are clocking the fuck out after the end of the day. They're not staying an extra couple minutes. They're not doing the extra thing. They're not going that extra step.
Not answering your email at 8 p.m., you fucking asshole. My hours are from 9 to 6. That's it.
And people
Ontario passed a law where you don't have to answer any work emails after work.
Let's play a game. Okay. The game is, let's think about the future that we want. Like that meme that goes around, this is the future liberals want. What is the actual future liberals want? What do we want?
Emancipation from capitalism, land back, and basically an ability to have freedom again. I know that sounds way oversimplified.
UBI.
I know that sounds way simplistic, but we don't have freedom right now, right? If you have to make a decision under coercion for the sake of your life, you're not making a free, informed decision, right? Our entire system is based off of coercion, right? You don't have the freedom to move to another city if you don't have money. You don't have the freedom to survive you don't have the freedom to live if you can't survive a life-threatening illness because you don't have health care. You don't have freedom of career development or whatever the fuck you want in your field of study if school is only paid for by loans that will put you into like an entire life's worth of suffering, right? What we have is a society that, from its fundamental most layer up until getting very rich, because when you're rich, you get freedom, right? You can buy whatever you fucking want. What we want is a society where everybody gets to be free, not just the people at the top. And I know that sounds massively reductionist, but that's it. That's all we've ever really wanted is freedom. Freedom to love who we want, freedom to live where we want, freedom to live how we want. And if it's not hurting other people, why the fuck should it not be allowed, right? If we're not destroying the planet, if we're not doing something that violates somebody else's informed consent, what's the fucking problem, right? Because ultimately we live in a society that has no freedom if you don't have money. And money and freedom are tied to each other, right? And it is a massive crime against humanity that we've been putting up with for far too long.
I mean, I honestly don't even think what you said was reductionist at all. I think it was a great simplification of an incredibly big issue, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all of those things,
really
like universal basic income and like healthcare for everyone, like all of those things ensure that you have the freedom to live your life.
I think too that like this incorporates like to kind of to bring it back to sort of, I guess, magic. Also, just real quickly to anyone listening, I apologize. My partner, if you hear him snoring in the background, he works overnight and everywhere in the house is full of people.
I can't hear him.
Okay. As I was saying though, a lot of people in magic, I'm sure we've all heard this, where people are like, it's not only is it hard to practice magic or be spiritual, but also to sort of like I guess to have time for it. You know what I mean? And I think, or to even have the space to engage with it. And I think that, or in religion in general, you know, for different religions around the world, etc. Like I think that just in general, things that make us happy, you know, our hobbies in general, you know, it's hard to even have time for those things when you're so busy, you know, trying to feed the machine, you know, when you're work, exhaustion, sleep, work, exhaustion, sleep, wash, rinse, repeat. And I think freedom also comes into having time for your hobbies. If you like to garden, if you like to sew, if you like to knit or play D&D or go LARPing or, you know, whatever your interests may be, I think freedom also should, you know, incorporate the more, also like the sort of the macrocosmic portion of freedom where it's like freedom to kind of to follow your bliss. You know, I think like,
100%.
you know, but I also think it once again, of course, you can't really separate these things because to kind of go to sort of go off of what Sophia was saying, like, were we talking about this the last time I was on? I don't remember, but the shorter work week, you know, like the 3-day work week and stuff like that. I think that those things are like essential. I think that for many, many, many businesses, obviously, like I'm not talking maybe necessarily about medical, you know, because we can't, you know, we can't stop people from
Needing
having medical
care.
problems. But you know, for many, many other businesses, there is no real reason for them to be open and kind of consuming the time of people who have lives to live, you know, who have things to do and people to see and friends to engage with. And I think that you know, people in general talk about, you know, I'm not alive just to work and die, you know. And I think though that once again, like Sophia was saying, like it's not fair that travel by flight is so expensive, or even a ship, a boat, like cruise lines are ridiculously expensive. You know, like these things that get you to experience other things. That's the experiencing other places and experiencing engaging with other people that are not like yourself. That's how we bring people together. Is through actually learning about each other through active participation. You know what I'm saying? Like you actively have to be present with people that are not like yourself, and it's not fair that those things are paywalled. To use, I guess, like a gamer term. You know, I don't know. I think like all of these things are these are the things that are important to me. I mean, obviously, of course, everything Sophia said, but I also like I want time. Like I think about it. I was just talking to a friend of mine about I would love to homestead a little bit. I want to grow like my own vegetables and that kind of thing. I was thinking maybe like have like maybe like one bee box and maybe like a couple of chickens for my own eggs. Just because like I really want to be able to cut costs on our food and grow my own food, that kind of thing. But
be
the
self-sufficient
thing is that
and you kind of know where your stuff's coming from.
yeah, and I don't need
Be
everything.
self-sufficient.
And like, don't get me wrong, like I don't need everything to come from my backyard. I just want to, you know. But what I'm trying to get at is that like I also want to grow like fruit trees and stuff. For partly for magic, partly for fruit, you know. But the thing is that my gardening is part medicine, part food, and
Curse
part
work.
hobby.
I said,
My
and
poison
part curse work.
my poison garden's a secret. No,
But your secret tree in the front of your yard that you can nail somebody's name to at midnight isn't a secret.
I was just thinking about something about that. But anyway, oh yeah, I was thinking about never mind.
No, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Oh no, I was thinking about a curse to make someone anxious using the aspen tree because it shakes, it shivers. Aspen trees shiver. So kind of
They're very
creating
sacred too.
and using the aspens shivering and shaking to make someone anxious. But it was just a passing thought. But I digress. The point is that gardening takes time, and it's a lot of work. And I think though that I should have a right to want to homestead my property. Like I feel like I should be allowed to have the time to treat my trees in case they have, bacteria or infection, and to ensure that my plants are free of um pests. And I know that, like, for a lot of people, especially, like the conservative party, they believe that these things sound like, the millennials and Gen Z's whining, You're all, what do they say, whiners, we're babies and
We
whatever,
work more hours than they do. We put up with more shit than they do, and we have less to show for it. But go
Right.
off about how we complain, even though they write fucking constant complaint articles about us.
Right.
Maybe evidence shows to the contrary that they're the giant fucking complainers, because if everywhere you go smells like shit, it's probably your own ass. But I digress.
Very true. But I don't know. I think these, like, simple things that I want, I don't know. I don't think it's much to ask for. I think it should just be given.
Mhm.
No,
They're not too much to ask for. Not
I
even
agree.
slightly.
Yeah, it's like you need to set the motions in place. Like, I would like to believe, and I'm going to put hope, and I'm going to put power and energy, and kind of direct my focus into this, and the sense of, like, by the time I'm in my retirement years, right, 60s, 70s, around there, I am going to hope that the seeds of change have at least sprouted, in the sense of, like, most people will wake up and start to realize, like, one, we all live on this planet and we have to take care of it if we all want to survive as a species. Period. End of discussion. So I hope that people will wake up enough by then. It will be far too late to prevent a huge amount of shit happening, but you know what? It will happen, and I think humanity has realized a lot of things about us too late. That's just kind of our big flaw. But I do hope that by that time, we'll have reached that point, at least with that.
I'm
And
picking
then
up
also,
an echo on you, Jay, through Rue's mic.
Oh, sorry. Surprised it's picking me up. You must have, like, a super mic over there.
I swear to God.
I don't think I'm talking that loud. I can't tell with these headphones on.
I know,
it's
I
so hard.
honestly think it was you coming through. I was too close to the mic and it was coming through my...
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
I was leaning too close.
But I also hope that people, like, reshape their thinking in the sense of, like, life is not about getting over on other people so you get ahead. That's not what we're doing here. Like, we as humanity should be preserving the planet. We should be preserving humanity. We should be preserving everything that's on this planet, like life. Life has to... We need to preserve life. I am putting all my hope and energy into, like, by that point in my life, I'm old as shit. At least I could maybe, like, leave this iteration of my existence knowing that at least, like, the work has started.
I mean,
people take a long time to get it together.
I might be an idealist, but I think it has. I think the seeds are there. I think that not to keep going with the plant analogies here, but some plants are harder to grow than others, and sure, it's taken us a little while, and maybe we're a tiny little seedling, but I think that the fact that we're having conversations, the fact that there are people who are trying, even in political spheres, they may not be perfect themselves, but I think the fact that we're trying is a great start. I know trying, it's exhausting because it's like, people are hurting, people are dying. Try, there is no try, only do. But I don't know if that's like, the reality of I don't know if it's a reality to expect instantaneous change.
Hmm.
I think that instantaneous change at times could cause harm. So maybe, I don't know. Not saying that there's a reason for the suffering, because that's toxic as hell.
Right, like I think
But
about it all the time, right? So like if all of a
you get what I'm
sudden,
trying to get at.
like if all of a sudden tomorrow, right, we woke up and it was like everyone has universal basic income. Everyone makes $1,000 a month. Everyone. Like, one, how do you orchestrate that? Like, how do you make sure that the funds are available for that or this or that? Like there was no, like, it would just be insane to do, like, immediately, like certain things like that,
You
and
could just
change, like,
tax Jeff Bezos.
right, yeah, and then just cut everyone a check for $2,000.
But even like taxing, even taxing the rich, right? Like, I mean,
it's a
like,
huge process because they
reminded
find
me-
every fucking tax loophole that exists.
right. Like, it reminded me of David Hogue, that young gentleman who unfortunately was in a school shooting here in the States. He was a young teen when it happened. He's a young man now. I don't know exactly how old, but he's not. He's closer to Darian's age, my partner, than he is ours. But he uh he's not even necessarily himself a politician. I believe he's in college studying like political science, but he actually, due to his platform that he created, because he went on to become an activist, professionally. So he, went and joined organizations and things, and he actually had a hand in some of those latest gun control reform stuff that recently happened here in the States. And sure, it's not everything we wanted, but he actually had a big hand in that. And for him, he was saying on his Twitter the other day about how he believes that things are different than before. He says, being in these spaces, he said, like, there's, you see, he's like, what I was kind of taking away from what he was saying was like, there's a difference when you're looking at it from the outside, and then when you're in the spaces where you're doing the work, and as far as like, officially or what have you, especially from his interesting perspective, not being a politician but being in official political spaces talking to officials. He still gets a perspective that I think is rare. And he's like, he said previously, he was like, I told you this time was different than before, and he was right. So I think that change is coming. I think it just it has a lot of pushback. And we're at a point now, I think, where, I mean, 2016 obviously didn't help, with, the 2016 election, and 45 and everything. That created it emboldened a lot of people to come out from under their holes, and start
Acting like fools.
wreaking havoc. And I think, though, that change is inevitable. I think that the momentum that we've built, as a society overall, I think it's not gonna diminish, not really. It'll have its ups and downs, but that's anything and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I guess once again I might just be an idealist, but after our conversation last time about hope, um, I've just been very like making sure that I stay walking my talk, you know what I mean? Like making sure that I remain hopeful, finding those spaces where I can kind of be like, it's not ideal, but this is, I think, the what change looks like in the beginning.
Yeah, like for me, like I'm kind of impatient sometimes. Like I can be patient. But when it comes to
Yeah.
big things, when it comes to things that I'm like, this needs to fucking change. This needs to stop. This needs to be different. It needs to be more whatever. I want that to happen immediately. And the problem is like you need to get so many other people on board with that same idea in order for them to understand that it needs to be changed, in order for them to understand that it's wrong, that it's a problem.
Right.
And like
At the same time, though, I completely understand why people are restless for it to happen because things have been bad for so long and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's so obvious that it should have been dealt with that we feel like, oh, it just needs to happen already because it
Yeah.
should have happened like 20 years ago on our
Mm-hmm.
parents' watch, but it didn't, right? And our generation also feels so hopeless that, like, we almost expect Gen Z to do something about it because we feel defeated at this point.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the whole like millennial defeatist kind of, I mean, like, I guess millennials can really be broken down into like two groups: the super fucking successful ones that were able to fucking figure it out, and then us.
I don't
who have
really
not
think they
been
figured it
able
out
to-
though. Like I think that they
They
just
got
had
lucky.
opportunity.
Opportunity.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of them had opportunity because I've only ever seen
Yeah.
like you know what it is with millennials? For me, from my perspective, it's it's really a case of the have and the have-nots.
Mm.
Every one of them that has made it. All the have-nots didn't.
Yep. If you had
Um,
rich family, you made it, right?
I mean,
yeah.
If you
yeah,
had
that's
family who could
just,
take care
yeah.
of you when you were broke, even family that wasn't rich like mine, the only reason I'm still successful right now and able to like get my shit together after a life of being fucked up is because my dad worked hard enough to save up a lot of money working in construction by making his own company that on the months where I couldn't afford rent, he'd help me cover it. Right. And he wouldn't just like send me money for fun or for whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if I really needed it, he'd be there so that I never ended up on the street because of that, right? And that ain't fucking rich people money. Like he had to like do extra work to get that money and pull it from somewhere
Mhm.
else. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, because my family was willing to help me out and we were not bottom of the barrel poor, then I ended up making it, right? And like he's like closer to middle class if I were to describe it honestly at this point. Like we were definitely lower income at a certain point when I was younger, but he got more success as he climbed, right? And that's part of why I am not completely fucked right now, right? But also at the same time, he didn't have enough money to just let me go and do whatever surgery I wanted when I came out as trans. And when I lost my car, I still don't have a car, you know? Like there's a whole bunch of things like that. So there's degrees to it. And if your family had money, you probably ended up just fine. And I know that's going to hurt for some people to hear, but it's a fucking hard truth.
It is. And I was actually also going to say, I just couldn't find a way to put it in, but thank you for saying it. I also was going to say that, and this is just a perspective of a have not, but who has family who are haves.
Mm-hmm.
They were middle class, upper middle, but my mom's oldest sister, even she, as time has progressed, I've noticed that that upper middle class, that bar is moving down
Mm-hmm.
because of the way the economy is, and
Yeah.
they're
They're feeling
not
the...
only what the doors that once opened for them in the early 2000s
Yep.
began to the bar is slowly going this way. So even she is even though obviously more than what we have, me and my mom, but even she has talked to my mom a lot, candidly, obviously, because they're sisters, about I wouldn't call them money troubles, but definitely money concerns. Definitely,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a thing when we were growing up about that upper middle class in general, really, because it's middle class is different now,
Yeah.
that changed. So I'm just gonna, for no one, just say middle class. When we were growing up, they were a lot of the haves because they had more social capital, they had more money power, uh, yeah. And that's why though. That's why millennials are so split in that
Hit
way.
and miss. Yeah. And here's a good example too. My mom, she's just now earning like $20 an hour, which is like the most that she's earned in her life. Mind you, that's with like inflation changes and the fact that she doesn't own a house now. She did own a house before when she lived with my dad when she got a home like loan back in the 1990s. But in the time that's happened, my mom went from being middle class by proxy of living with my dad, who has like his own construction company, to just straight up poor now. Like she earns $20 an hour so she can afford shit, but she has to live with her sister. And like she only gets a certain amount of hours per year. She can't earn over a certain amount, so she's never gonna break like 30 grand in a year or some shit like that. Like something abysmally small, right? And she's never going to own a house for the rest of her life, and she knows it. We were just talking about this, right? Whereas my dad, because he owns a construction company, he takes contracts from the government. As everything got worse for everybody else, it actually stayed pretty consistent for him, right? So being able to consistently stay middle class means that you get to keep existing in the way that you are, right? So he still has his own home that he owns, right? He still has his company that he's going to pass on to my brother, right? He still takes government contracts because the government has money to spend. It's just regular people that don't, right? So there's a lot of fucked up layers to it that like he got through on it by being okay, but also his entire existence is defined by being subservient to the ruling class and making whatever the fuck they want him to, right? And he wouldn't see it as such, but he truly is never going to break free of doing contracts for the rich man, because that's how he's defined his entire existence, and he won't even let himself retire because he's got such Stockholm syndrome about it, because that's what carried him through life, and he thinks he did right and did all these good things, when in reality he just allowed himself to be exploited so bad that he didn't have a life to spend with his kids and his family, right?
Right.
So like he paid for that in costs, in like not having us in his life, and like having most of the way that I even interacted with my dad as a human being was when he hired me onto his company because he wanted me to fucking take it over for him, and the work and shit he tried to teach me, right? We don't really have a close relationship outside of like that, as far as I know, growing up. So like everything he even had to get to stay middle class cost him every other aspect of his fucking life, and he will never be able to admit it because he was taken such severe advantage of, you know? Anyways, This is me ranting about middle class destruction.
No, I mean it's apt, you know what I mean? Like it's an important part of what we're talking about,
Like,
you know, and like I think too that the implications of what Sophia was talking about was also the sort of rampant trauma faced by our generation as well. The lack of connection to parent, um the sort of the exhaustion of our parents, which I've come to realize tends to be like a really big issue. They get so exhausted themselves trying to keep their families afloat monetarily, that they don't really have the space for anything else, and so it becomes toxic, and it becomes, you know, unavailable, resentful. Yeah, and it creates it's all
conversations when dad says he'd than kids.
Oh.
Did your dad say that?
Yes,
he'd rather have a boat than kids?
Yes, he straight up told me he would rather have a boat than kids.
This is the same man that bought a $20,000 plot of land because he's extremely racist.
Because he didn't want black people to purchase it and live behind him. He's a real piece of shit.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And he's on his way here now.
He's literally in the air right now.
No, I was thinking what you were saying, Sophia, how like it's like a fucked up like situation, like with your dad, right? So like I'm in a similar, like I'm sort of in a similar fucked up situation. So my job makes decent money, sure, but like I'm living in a house, like it's an old family owned house, so like yeah, my family is directly helping me. They're not giving me money, but they are letting me live in this old piece of shit house for free. I just pay the utilities on it, so sure, awesome. I deal with the things that come with living in an old, not taken care of house. Fine. I hate that though, because it's still like, it's like a tether, you know what I mean, like to my family. But I'm in a really fucked up situation in the sense of like, my family, like they grew up poor, but my grandfather, he worked a ton, funnily enough, in construction. He was a union carpenter, and he worked a shit ton of overtime, and he worked overnights, and he just spent every hour of his life working, and then the other hours of his life drinking. And then he just socked away a bunch of money, and he still lives in the shit neighborhood where he grew up in. He still lives down there, and he owns a couple properties, and he's not like a landlord or anything. He was in the past. He doesn't do that anymore. But anyway, so he's sick. He's got some issues going on. He's got like a wound on his foot. You know, he's not doing well. He's doing okay, but no, I don't know. got some things going on, some old man things going on. And the reality is that, okay, well, Grandpa might die in the next months, years. Like, it may come sooner rather than we think. Turns out the dude is sitting on cash. Like, his properties have value. He just squirrels away money like nothing. Like, he's a miser. Like, he lives like a homeless dude, but he's not.
Yep.
You know what I mean? His bank accounts do not reflect his living situation. And so, I'm in a really difficult position because I know the only way that I am going to improve my situation, the only way I'm going to purchase a house, is when that man dies and my inheritance comes to me. Because I know that there's money there and that will come to me because it's all in a will and it's all going to be split up, and I know exactly how it's going to be divvied up. I don't know the exact dollar amount, but I know that it will be enough for me to put a down payment on a house and pay off my credit card debt. And that is the only way I'm going to get ahead, is with a large influx of cash, because I have great credit.
Yeah.
But I have no cash to do anything with. So I'm constantly beating myself up because I'm like, wow, it's just really fucked up that the only way that I'm going to get ahead is when my grandfather dies. And that's really fucked up. Like, to just sit there and think about that.
That's kind of the dilemma of the whole world. The only way everything is going to get better is when the people who are so decrepit and are refusing to change with the times pass away, and they can't, by anything in their power, stop it from happening. And that all of their wealth, all of their influence, it will go to somebody else. And somebody else will be younger, with more adapted to the world views. Even though some of us millennials, especially those of us insulated by money, like we talked about, will have more conservative views, they're going to be less conservative than the generation before them, you know? Like, change is absolutely fucking inevitable. You can't fight it unless you are committing yourself to a losing battle. That's the only way you can do it, you know?
And maybe that's why
why conservatism over time ultimately loses out. Go ahead.
I think maybe that's why, like, a lot of these people with these conservative views seem so radicalized. Like, the shit that they say is wild. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, how the fuck could someone actually believe what the fuck you're saying? Like, are you serious right now? Like, who's that? I don't even know what the hell they're... One of these Trump advisors, she was saying something like, you know, I like my air conditioning in the summer, and if we switch to windmill energy, we're just not gonna have air conditioning in the summer. I'm like,
that's not true.
I'm like, bitch,
windmill energy has actually produced so much energy in the UK, they had to dial back its production value because they weren't ready for it.
But there's a whole room.
They didn't have the means to transmit and store it.
Right. And it's like, logically, we know that. Factually, like, everything, like, we know this. Fact, science, all of this says this chick is wrong. But there's a whole room full of people like, yeah, applauding her and thinking she's like the fucking messiah. And I'm like,
the
what?
thing is that the kind of brainwash, and it truly is brainwash, very cult. Many people who've studied cults have actually attributed, who you know, academically, who studied cults and cult behavior. We actually do find that there really is no difference between sort of these cult-like, if you will, followers of conservatism and how they behave. The thing is that when it comes to that, it means that facts, science, data, hard data, etc., they no longer matter. It's not about the truth. It is about the
belief.
The belief in it. And the thing is that, like, the breaking those things, it very much, unfortunately, is about you, like the individual. You have to be one. That's why I think people talk about waking up, right? That's why I think we use that terminology, because a lot of cult survivors also wake up. They also use similar verbiage to discuss, like, when they're ready to leave. If they're actually, like, in a cult, you know what I'm saying? And I think that it's similar here, and not even similar. I think it's the same.
Honestly, like, I think I grew up in a cult mentality. I really do. Like, we joke about it, me and my sister, about the cult of Jimbo, my dad. But our entire existence revolved around how he was feeling. Don't do that, that'll upset your father. No, your father doesn't like it. Yes, your father were like that. Do that for your father. Like, every decision, action, every piece of food in the house, every piece of clothing that we wore, we weren't allowed to wear certain clothes because, no, your father wouldn't. Everything was about him and how he felt, and he made that known too. Like, he understood that it was all about him. And basically what he reinforced was like, we are a good family, nothing is wrong at home, you are loved and you are taken care of. And it's like, if you have to tell me I am loved and taken care of repeatedly on a daily basis, like, I always used to get yelled at for, you treat your teachers with more respect than you do me. And I didn't have the language as a child, but now I realize my teachers treated me with more respect than you treat me with. Like, my teachers respect me more. They listen to me when I talk. They like my ideas. I like I think I loved my teachers, especially as a young child. I did not really have much love for my parents. Don't. And it's just very, like, it's like shit to deal with that sort of, like, realization that, like, you grew up in this cult. But, like, I started to look, like, cause, like, as a kid, like, I would look at other people's houses and I was like, they live wrong. Like, your life is incorrect because your life is not like my life. And it took me a long time to break that. Like, you would think that I grew up in some, like, conservative Christian fucking cult. No, I just grew up in the cult of my dad, because whatever the fuck he wanted was whatever the fuck happened. And so we played this perfect family for everyone else. But then when the doors closed, it was shit breaking and smashing and going off the rails, and I'm awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm just supposed to go to school the next day. Like, I didn't not sleep all night because dad was up throwing shit and acting like a fool. But we have the perfect life. And I genuinely thought for the longest time that was normal and perfect, and then I woke up.
The only thing different for me was that I always knew it was wrong. I didn't have the words to know exactly why it was wrong, but I knew that my father doing very similar things, especially the smashing and the whole, mine was don't tell anyone.
That too. Yeah, that
You
too.
know,
Don't tell anyone what happens in this house. It's private.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything that happens here is
Yep. Nothing leaves the house.
And I knew it was wrong, and it would eat at me because I knew that my house was a nightmare. And I mean, the thing is, for me, I mean, it makes me wonder if your father is a narcissist, because that's narcissistic behavior.
He is. I would say he's
okay.
pretty textbook.
Yeah. And
he's also a Scorpio.
Ooh, narcissistic Scorpios.
Oh, was your mic muted?
Yep.
Oh.
Love it. Yeah, no, both his parents.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Just classic how narcissistic they are. Like, you can see his mind click off. I don't exist to him. He does not, any word I say, he does not listen. He does not hear. He does not process. It just goes, yeah, exactly. It's just like, what?
It's wild.
It is Jimbo, all him.
Like, for example,
all the time.
This is a conversation that I will have in a couple hours with my dad when I see him. Oh, what are you guys doing? What's going on? Oh, we're going to this paranormal circus tonight. There's this show up here. There's a paranormal circus happening. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna go to the circus. Yeah. So the airport, yeah, it was real fucking, just no regard. Not even like, oh, that's interesting. Where are you sitting? Did you get good seats? It does not care. Does not care. It is not about you.
It is. Where is your father from?
Kensington.
He's from Kensington.
Born and raised.
I always thought that attitude that my father had was a really old school kind of a country bumpkin kind of thing. That's what I always thought.
My dad's
That's
kind
where I
of
always
like a
thought my
wannabe
father came
country
from.
guy. He's real weird like that. Like, he's totally a city dude. Like, born and raised in Philly his whole life, but loves him some NASCAR, loves the whole Florida Southern, has
He
a
retired to
Confederate
Florida.
flag.
Need I say more?
No.
Yeah.
So he
yeah.
became a country fucking bumpkin. He
Yeah.
literally became Florida man.
Yeah,
No,
he-
and
yeah.
by the way, to our audiences who live in country areas who grew up there, I
Who
am
are
not
not, yeah.
talking like I'm not saying that being like from
No
the country makes
generalizations here.
you a horrible person, just as a heads up.
There's a stereotype that comes with every region, I guess, that you live in.
Yeah.
I'm Philly trash. Hello. We destroy robots and throw batteries at Santa.
I
The
cried when we
snowballs.
killed that robot.
The hitchhiker,
Stop.
the hitchbot,
I cried. I actually cried.
that popped up again in, like, on Twitter. It was like, oh, a hitchbot, you know, it made it through Canada with no problem, and then it ended up in Philly with no fucking arms. And I was like, oh, right.
I actually cried for the robot. I know that sounds so stupid, but I actually cried. I
We
was so
dedicate
upset.
this episode of Witches Betwixt to Hitchbot. May he rest in peace.
But
Oh man.
that was really good.
I know, that was pretty
Thanks.
good.
It's like I used to do it for 18 years.
It never fails to make me giggle that Jim is an openly gay witch, and the Catholic churches in South Philly love to hear him sing, and they pay him
Right.
money to sing, and it just tickles my pickle to know that.
Well, don't worry. All as I will say, because I don't want the Catholic Church to see this and like harm him in any way, so he's gotten his revenge. That's all I'll say.
It just makes me just so happy to know that. He still sings with the churches, right? Nothing has changed?
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
it's
okay.
part of
Yeah,
his
I was
job.
gonna
It's
say,
part
that's
of how
most
he
of his
makes
main
money.
income, yeah.
Mhm.
Bless.
Hilarious.
He most certainly did.
Oh gosh. So speaking
Just so
of
you
what
know,
we're
Catholic
all
Church,
debating
some of
what
your
we need to wear. Oops, sorry.
no, I was like, just so you know, Catholic Church, some of your altar boys are gay too.
A lot of your old.
Finger guns.
Oh god, that got dark. I'm like, doesn't it make it easier that way? Oh god.
I
Well, I was talking as far as how Jim got his revenge.
I want to tell you, Sophia, so we're all attending a witch's ball in October,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what to wear.
I'm gonna be.
Yeah, you're like our
living
fashionista here,
puppet.
so like, huh?
Get yourself a good hat.
That's what I said. We went to Spirit of Halloween yesterday, and I was trying out all these different hats.
Are they open?
We went over
Okay,
to Marlton,
hear
New
me out,
Jersey.
Ah.
Took a little
Hear me out,
Jersey
though.
road trip.
Handmade leather hat fit for you in a style you'd actually wear. Do that.
See, I tried bowler hats. They didn't look good. Top hats, they didn't look great either. The wizard hat looked pretty
What about
good,
wide
actually.
brim? Yeah, you could get a wizard hat. But
Yeah.
what about like the wide brim witch hat too? It doesn't even have to be leather.
Right. See, okay, so
Or
it all
top
starts with the
hat?
hat. So my outfit is going to be designed around whatever the fuck hat I pick.
A lot of good wizards I know have a hat.
I know, because like Crystal Rapello, he always has the where's like a Jeff cap.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, he always has the hat. But I can't do that. I can't
Which
copy
is
his
not
style.
so much. We sport necklaces.
Yeah, Scott's usually the one that's got like 10,000 fucking necklaces on.
I have that down to 2 now.
Oh, you pared
That's
down.
because I finally
I just remember the first time I ever
Yeah,
met
I
Scott was
grew
at a Pagan Pride event. Actually, it was in 2014, the second year they did the event. The first time I ever met Scott, and you just there's so many. It was like all tangled up.
You know what? I think that I used amulets at that time to protect me from emotional
Everything.
shit too. And I remember one of my I didn't really have teachers. I like to call them mentors. But when I was working at Harry's, one of the people there, he always said to me, he's like, whenever I couldn't see too well, when I couldn't perceive spirits and receive psychic impressions, he was like, "You're wearing too much protection."
You know, that
And
makes
I
sense, though,
would
yeah.
take off layers, and all of a sudden it would open up.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
Um,
like if you want to work with the Fae, well, like maybe iron whatever off of,
right,
whatever you're
right.
doing.
That or superheat it and quench your iron in a tincture of Datura, and then you're
Oh,
good.
really?
Wow, I've just realized why the iron is a word against the Fae, and it's such a fuck you move. Because like they ruled the planet until humans took iron out of stone, right? And so it's basically like a haha, fuck you, don't fuck with me thing. And they're like, oh, this son of a bitch.
Is that where that comes from? Like,
I
is that
actually
like
didn't.
a
There are
folklore
parts
thing?
of there's still parts of things. I mean, I know that from like I only know like they can't come from the water, but yeah, they're supposed to be ancient. Like they were supposed to be here before
Humanity was.
yeah, essentially. Yeah. Um yeah, I forget what I was saying, but yes.
Well, we are at like an hour and 7, so we've really come up on our hour, and I think kind of
One last thing. One last
mm,
thing if you don't mind. Does anybody want to hear about a dream that I had that I posted on my Facebook about?
Yes.
I did read that, and I want to hear you retell it here because it was very wild.
So yeah, I want to like tell all of you about it. I'm like really excited to talk to you. So I had this really, really out of the blue experience, and a couple days ago I was falling asleep, and I'm not as lucid in my sleep as I used to be, but that's because I don't meditate not nearly as much as I should. But years ago I was meditating more frequently, and I would lucid dream much more frequently. But the good thing is that once you kind of learn lucid dreaming and you kind of can kind of remain sometimes. Well, anyway, I could feel myself falling asleep every night. I can actually feel the sort of that drawing closed, sort of moving backwards sort of feeling. And as soon as I reach that moment, all of a sudden I'm looking at myself. Like it almost made me feel like I woke up again. Like that's how quick um I'm looking through a sort of not a window, but just like an opening. And I'm looking at myself kneeling on a stone floor. Now everything behind me is empty blackness, and everything in front of me, I can only see me through because of a moon, a full moon that was shining through a hole in the ceiling of what I later perceived to be like this stone structure, like a almost like a gothic stone chaplet of some kind. Um, and everything everything untouched by the moon's light was just empty darkness. I couldn't see outside of anything lit up by the moon. And there was a recess in a wall in front of me. And out of that recess, out of the empty blackness, stepped out a figure. And his face was, um, he was humanoid, and his face would have been a human face, but half of the face was a skull, like an exposed skull, and the other half was bark and really thick vines, almost as if like the bark was his skin and the skull was underneath, skeleton underneath, right? And there was moss on the cheek of the skull, and there were vibrant, really vibrant green plumage, or what have you, uh, on him in different places, and he wore a crown and a red mantle. It almost kind of looked like a stereotypical, like the Halloween King costume.
Mm-hmm.
that red sort of thing, but which I found out is actually a real thing. The mantle was, but it was only worn during like coronations and like particular ceremonies back in medieval time.
Hmm.
But anyway, he wore a crown and a red mantle, and I don't remember if we talked, but I remember not being afraid of him. But it was interesting because as he stepped out, the moon sort of like followed him. Like as he stepped out of the shadow, the moon followed him, and it lit up. Like at first, it was like this view of like his face, like this of like right here. And as he stepped further out, I could see him. At this point, like when he steps out and I could see the eyes, I suddenly was like no longer standing on the outside. I was actually on the floor, like looking through my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And he steps out and he says, "I am the green god." Just like that. And I don't remember if we talked after that. But what I remember is he gently reaches his hand down to pick me up, and I instinctually just grab his hand, and he hoists me up, and he moves the other hand as if to sort of move a curtain. You know how like you move a curtain, and I look, and the wall that he came out of, it's a stone wall, but there's like vines and like really thick vines. And it was interesting because the shape of the vines was like a womb. And he moves it like a curtain, and it opens up into this rich green glade with like birds and natural ponds and like greenery everywhere as far as the eye can see. And I knew to follow. And I started to, and then Darian started thrashing in his sleep. And I'm a light sleeper. I don't dream. I don't sleep real heavy. Especially not having just fallen asleep,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is something to note here. I have really bad insomnia and I sleep really bad. And so he, as soon as that happened, I got pulled out of it. But the fact of the matter is, I don't sleep well. How did I start dreaming when I first fall asleep? That doesn't happen to me. I don't sleep.
My other
And
question
sure,
to you
one could
is,
argue that I was.
did you smoke before you started
I
to?
did.
You
I
did?
did.
Okay.
I did smoke, but smoking doesn't generally cause me. It actually generally actually stops me from dreaming.
Same.
I
So
generally don't
different.
dream when I smoke.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that. For me and
So
Drew,
I-
that is not the case.
It's one of the great big benefits for me, actually, is I don't have to put up with my fucking dreams.
And generally speaking, I fall into a deep, like dreamless sleep when I smoke, which is why I do it, so I can actually feel rested. But this is how I know it was something else. Because all these things don't match up to just how my body works, and I am very in tuned with how my body behaves and what's
Especially with
abnormal.
sleep, because you
Right.
have difficulty sleeping, so you're very
I've
aware of the
always,
process of
my
going to
entire
sleep.
life, I've had difficulty sleeping, entire life. And so this was odd. And then to make it even weirder, and this was like that like synergic synchronicity type stuff, the entire next day. So A24 is a production company. They often do a lot of folk horror. They love the folk horror genre. And
Are those the ones that did The Witch?
yeah, A24.
I think folk horror is my go-to genre for horror. I used to say I
Yeah,
wasn't a
it's
horror
worth
fan,
checking.
and then I watched that movie,
Man
and
is
I was
one
like,
that I want to see.
"Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, it's
I want
amazing."
to though. But there's one called The Green Knight. Now, if you know anything about the Green Man, you know that there is a connection to the ancient Arthurian legend, where one of the Knights of the Round Table, there is actually further story of I believe it's Lancelot. I'm not 100% certain, but he goes off to then become essentially the Green God or the Green Man through this sort of supernatural fae-like adventure that he sets out onto. And it's interesting that like now I didn't even because I knew that they made the Green Knight. I thought it was ages ago, but all of a sudden now it's like popping back up all over
Right.
my social media the next day, and I haven't looked it up. I wasn't, I wasn't looking up the Green Man. I wasn't even thinking about the Green Man, and all of a sudden, the Green Man shows up. Now, here's a detail that nobody knew, and now everyone will know. When I was looking at myself on the outside, looking in, the person kneeling, and this is interesting because of therapy, as I've discussed here before, was a younger version of me. Not a child,
just younger,
but younger. And
like still an adult?
Close.
Like borderline,
18,
like
19, 20.
Post high school.
And that was really interesting. And given the regenerative and transformative attributes of the Green Man and his particular virtues, that was particularly revealing for me. So I definitely kind of want to go back there to meditate and to hopefully bring myself back there. But I thought there was just a really interesting story.
That is incredibly. That was such a vivid, detailed dream. Like
That's
you
another thing. It
remembered
was
so much.
detailed. I could feel the rock underneath of my knees. Like I was actually like when I tell you I could feel it.
Right.
If you ever kneel down on like stone, it hurts and it's uncomfortable.
Hello.
And that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Like I could feel it. And that's not how I dream. That's not
right.
My dreams are weird. Like I know this is lame, but because of my insomnia, people with insomnia, apparently it's a thing I saw on TikTok. We like to sort of create these like stories in our head to help us fall asleep. It's our version of counting sheep. It's just more interactive. And normally I kind of go like I'll like replay like moments from like D&D or some kind of like fantasy story that I have going on in my head, and I act it out and I fall asleep through that. So my dreams end up generally being like these ridiculous amalgam of high fantasy and my life, so this was distinct. This was like
I would definitely say
unusual.
that's definitely like something visited, obviously.
Right.
Like it would be silly to say no. that wasn't.
Like, this was too strange.
Right, because no one wants to be the witch that's like, yes, I was personally visited by the green god himself. Like no one wants to be like that. But...
Right, because it's contrite. You know what I mean? When you start to do that, it's self-important, it's contrite. So but like I want to be logical, but like how could you be logical in the face of something supernal? You know what I'm saying? Like
I feel that.
But yeah, that was pretty powerful. It really was. Now like I have this
That's
thing
a good
like
Scott quote. How can you be logical in the face of something supernal?
T-shirts.
T-shirts.
Yay, Scott quotes.
Oh.
We should have a dreams channel.
Don't we?
Also, wow, I look jacked just by casually sitting. Like every time I move, I'm like, my arms look huge. What the fuck?
It was funny. There was something so well timed. You were like stretching back, and I really was hoping we were not going to have a fashion disaster on stream. But Scott had said the word revealing as you were stretching back, and I was like, well, that's just well timed. It's just really funny. Scott was like, it was very revealing, and Sophia's like,
too. I look like a long hot dog, like stretched infinitely.
I was like, how much further can she stretch?
Quite a fair bit.
Huh?
So, I'm sorry. I'm like I'm admiring my beard in the camera. I'm like, I wish my beard was this red in real life. Oh my god. Sorry.
Seriously, I look like a completely different person off camera. When you can see all my imperfections, but I actually do have eyebrows. They do exist. On camera they don't. I do have eyebrows.
So buff. Like, look at me.
We should all
Okay,
just
it
sit
looks
here.
like I'm just gonna like.
We should all just have
punch
an
anybody out
episode.
at any given
We all
moment.
just sit here and just admire
Admire.
my
like an art piece.
scraggly mountain man attempt beard that I'm.
I like your beard. Shush.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm keeping it. I usually I get comments from Rob. Rob is very invested in my beard growth and development. So I was like, should I shave before Pagan Pride or just let it be all wild and crazy? I decided to let it be wild and crazy. Rob can see progress.
A true
Yes, he
art
will
friend.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, we're at like an hour and 20.
All right.
I think I'm also very hot and I want to turn my air conditioner back on because I can't run it while we record. Ooh, yeah, do that. And you have D&D today, right?
Nope.
Oh, did he get...
Unfortunately, the DM, he had to put his dog down, so
Oh Jesus.
no D&D. No D&D. Yeah. We're gonna take some time.
On a side note, Jay, you should get back into Destiny. Arc 3.0 launches this next week, which means that every subclass is updated to the new system where you no longer select your entire build with like one path. You get to pick every ability and aspect, how they line together.
Oh, I actually was in
He has
Destiny
been
like 2 days.
playing
Yeah, I've
a
been
little
playing off and on. I'm like trying to play through like the old content and catch up.
I need the Switch
Yeah.
to come out with like a really good like MMORPG. I really, really need them.
That's
to.
what this is, Scott. You could play it with us. Except it's not on
drop
Switch.
that off to you.
Yeah, that's all we have. Switch. Huh?
We have a play.
Yes.
That's right.
World PS. And there's several MMOs on there. Like one Destiny, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're into that. But there's also
Game Magic
Bless
Space
Unleashed.
Halo.
There's Neverwinter is on PS4.
Yep.
There's a bunch of them. Genshin
I really do
Impact,
think you'd like Destiny. Did you ever play Halo, Scott?
Mm-mm.
Well, you might like this because the game is all about gay space magic. Like most of the main characters are gay, and like it's amazing.
Gay.
They unironically have a gay robot in it. Okay.
They do.
He reminded me. There's a gay community. And he's from Italy, but he lives here, and he's like the irony of how in Italy how you say gay is just gay.
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 It's the title of this episode: Gay but Italian.
Gay.
Gay but make it Italian. No, what did
Gay?
Rue was putting together a scavenger hunt for Pagan Pride Day for like a kids activity, and it's like all these zodiac signs.
I love that.
And you were writing the symbol for, what was it? Libra? It looks like the one for Scorpio, but gayer. That's what you said. You were like, is the Scorpio one is it Gemini? I don't know. I don't know them off the top of my head. Two of the symbols look really similar. Virgo?
Virgo is gay Scorpio.
Virgo is gay Scorpio. Got it.
Yeah.
That is the title of this episode.
Okay.
Virgo is gay Scorpio.
Rude.
You heard it here, folks.
Considering I have a Scorpio ascendant and a Virgo moon. So,
if it
the
wasn't
name of
for
the
all the
occult shop,
Libra
Scorpio
in my chart,
rising.
I would
What's
feel
up?
stupendously offended.
As the Virgo of the group.
We bought a photo box to put things in, to take pictures, to put on the shop.
For product
for
pictures.
Scorpio rising. Like a photo box. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to see your game. It's gonna be cute. You're really good at those, creating these cute little games for the kids.
Oh, it's,
I was.
Last year it was
my first 12 list. My first list of 12 riddles that was rated too difficult for children's minds. And then we had to go back and simplify them.
Well, that's okay.
There was like these riddles, and I was like, "What are these like $5 words you're like dropping in for these kids?" And I was like, "I wouldn't even know what zodiac sign this is."
I have a master's degree. Why would I know?
I was like, "You're a little too abstract." Like, we gotta go color, season, animal, like...
Simple.
How many stars in the constellation?
Not forsooth, wherefore art The zodiac.
I am the ethereal hunter in the skies of mankind years ago. Sagittarius?
All right.
Okay.
I
can
can't.
tell we're
I'm
so
done.
chatty
I'm
still.
done
I gotta
ripping
put
on my
myself to
wife. I'm
bed.
so sorry.
I'm gonna go eat food.
Yes, go eat food, everyone.
I'll talk to
Everyone.
you
Have a
guys
good
later.
day.
I'll
Thanks
talk to
for
you all later.
watching. Be
Thank you,
super
everyone.
gay.
Always be the gay.
Be gay.
Go.
Gay.
Gay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. God.